boss makes the whole experience.
Internauta da Top News.
He is not fun. I cried. I just gave him one backhand and he was gone.
Muita tristeza. Que notícia triste, minha gente. Nossa Senhora. Principalmente aí os amantes de videogame. Faleceu o diretor criativo de B.U. Good e Evil 2, Emily Morel. Morreu repentinamente aos 40 anos, gente. De repente, assim, de acordo aí com o relatório do IGN. Por enquanto, a causa continua desconhecida, mas várias homenagens já foram publicadas em sua página profissional do LinkedIn. Morel começou sua jornada na Ubisoft em 2009 e nos últimos anos estava concentrado no desenvolvimento de B.U. Good Evil 2 em diferentes funções antes de finalmente se consolidar como diretor criativo. Abre aspas, um colega querido por mais de uma década na Ubisoft. Rimos e choramos por bons e maus momentos e enviamos muitos jogos ótimos juntos, fecha aspas, escreveu a ex-colega de Morel. Emily estava muito orgulhoso, gente, de B.U. Good e Evil 2 do Space Monkey e de seus companheiros de equipe.
Reflux in Rayman 3, who has worn everyone who has met him into the dust. And especially Brock in Pokemon. Oh, when you had the misfortune to choose Charmander in the first place. Are you the Charmander team? And of course, Ganon in Zelda, that we had to deal with after Ganondorf when we thought we would finally be safe. Just kidding on that last one. Only took me 2 tries. And then there are the bosses that give bosses a bad name. And then there's the soft ones that are fun to beat. I mean, beating a boss doesn't have to be a horrible experience. Thank you, Bowser in Super Mario Sunshine, for staying in your hot tub. Thank you. So, would video games be as enticing if bosses weren't a thing? Helping me find out are my awesome guests. Joining me are Emile Morel, creative director with Ubisoft, who's worked on such games as Rayman Legends and currently working on Beyond Good and Evil 2. We've got Rachel Howie, aka Don't Rage Quit, gamer and Twitch partner and famous for her Dark Souls streams as well. And also, we've got gamer, presenter from The Jump, top man, Mr. Midas.
Thank you so much for having us, my G.
Oh, thank you guys, because you got to help me find out the answer to this question. Why do we have bosses in video games? Emil?
Wow. So in terms of, I would say, pure game design, I think bosses, it's a way, when you've been doing one level or a few levels in old school games, the boss was the ultimate test to see if you have really learned and mastered what you had been taught before in the previous level.
That's true, but it feels a bit like school though, when you got the exams at the end and you got to revise and you got to remember everything you've done. Why can't it be a culmination of all the work I've done before, like coursework? Why can't it be that?
I think really the idea is also to have something a bit, spectacular, a bit epic, a bit challenging, and yeah, it's defeating a boss is always like a reward in itself. It's something. I mean, to me, a good boss, you have to, sweat a bit on your controllers, try a few times, and yes, I think that's super rewarding just as a player, to defeat like big challenge like this.
That's true. Rach, you know about crazy boss fights, don't you?
Love a boss fight.
What's the hardest boss that you've had to face?
It has to be the final boss of just the regular playthrough of Sekiro. His name is Shin. He is not fun. I cried.
Well, me and Midas wouldn't even know about it. We ain't got that far in the game.
I haven't even seen the last boss. I saw boss number 2, and that's as far as I got.
I haven't played Sekiro, but I would compare it to Bloodborne. To me, in Bloodborne, like every enemy at the beginning is almost a boss in itself. and you're sweating on your controller already like...
Isn't that unfair though, Midas? Is it unfair to just like chuck big bosses like at you right at the start of the game?
Yeah, fam, try to stress me out, give me grey hairs and then sit there. Do you know what? I think it really depends what type of player you are, because there are some players, some gamers who their joy is to be challenged. They want to feel like they're smarter than everybody else, they're stronger than everybody else, and they can defeat the bosses that I can't.
So race, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
They can defeat the ones that I can't, so yeah, it really depends what type of gamer you are, innit?
Okay, what's one of the toughest bosses for you, Emil?
I don't really know if it's that tough, but it's a memory of when I was young, A game that you may have heard of, Strider. And at that time, what made it super hard is that when you were dying, you had to start right from the beginning. So every boss was like, oh no, please, you're going to, to have to learn the pattern and everything. And I don't know why, but the end boss of Strider used to be so hard for me as a kid. And Out to the point that I called, I don't know if you had this in the UK, but in France we had this. It was called Master Sega. You could call Master Sega on phone, and you had people answering you and telling you how to defeat the boss. So I called Master Sega and I asked, what can I do to defeat the Strider final boss? And he had no idea. So I guess I never finished the game.
Yeah, the master, ring him out. He's got him on the hotline. I love that. Nintendo used to do a thing like that. They used to have like Nintendo hotline, isn't it? When you had difficulty with like a particular game, you could call it up and there'd be experts on that other line to kind of guide you through.
Experts. Somebody's dad, basically.
Someone's dad, yeah, and it's costing £1 a minute as well. Midas, for you, what's the tough one for you, man?
I love myself a JRPG, and Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games. Sephiroth is one of my favorite bosses ever. But why, oh why, are the boss fights 45 minutes long, fam?
Yeah.
When I mean, when you play Sephiroth, the final battle, half an hour, you die. You gotta start all again.
Yeah.
And not only do you have to start again from that boss, you have to start before you get to him. So you gotta start
go through the
back.
cutscenes.
You gotta go, before the cutscenes, you gotta fight about 10 other man before you get to see Sephiroth again.
That's true. I felt that, man. When I was playing Yakuza Like a Dragon, I got stuck on the crane boss. You have to fight a crane.
Wow.
That's weird. Not good people.
Are we talking like
There's a guy in the crane.
bird?
There's a guy operating the crane. So I can't make it clear. There's a guy inside the crane. It's not just the crane, but like you're hitting the crane. Wow. And you have to hit the crane enough for him to fall out the crane, so then you can beat him up before he gets back in the crane.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's just it's tough boss. But are there any bosses that you feel like really proud of, like you've defeated in record time, or people you've heard that these bosses are super tough, but you've managed to like take them down like first time? And it's like, oh, I didn't find that hard. Are there any bosses that you've found that are like that?
Well, one of the most infamous bosses in Dark Souls is Ornstein and Smough. The thing that makes these guys so hard is that there's two of them, and they do not give you a break. They are one after the other. They are at you the whole time. So I beat them with one hand. And that took me about 2 weeks.
She's on a different level.
Hey, some gamers only have one hand and they manage it, so why can't I?
That's true.
But,
That's true.
So that was.
She is.
That was good fun.
I'm afraid.
Recently, I actually beat them without using a weapon as well.
Oh wow! What, bare hands?
I was only rolling. So there's this armor set that has tiny wee spikes on it.
Oh, right.
And when you roll, it does like 10 damage, and they have like 2,000 health. So that was good fun.
So you were doing the Sonic the Hedgehog technique.
Yes, it was the Sonic run. Yeah, so that was. I will never forget that as long as I live.
Can someone take away my gamer badge? I actually have to do the stuff that Rachel's talking about.
She's rolling.
Yeah, completely rolling.
She's doing the Sonic the Hedgehog.
All right, we're going to take a minute to talk about your amazing dress, because you are wearing something from my favorite game.
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda.
That's a good point. Ganondorf, man.
Ganondorf. So,
one of my favorite villains.
Breath of the Wild, all right? So Breath of the Wild is designed in an open sandbox that you can go straight to Ganon, or you can go through the game. Because I love the game so much, I'm doing everything, every challenge, everything. Time I got to Ganon, I just gave him one backhand and he was done. I was like, Ganon, you meant to challenge me, fam. One piece of backhand and he was out of it.
It's a shame it didn't scale up, because some bosses scale, don't they? Because some bosses where when you're leveling up, the boss will also level up. So when you get to them, they're always a challenge. So, guys, what are the ingredients needed to make a good boss fight?
First, the fact that it needs to be a bit epic. So there needs to be a bit of, a great music, some mise en scène to introduce the boss and everything. Then I guess in terms of pure game design, you have the different patterns we already talked about. It used to be in all games 3 patterns, and each time it was a bit different. So it meant also 3 times you had to hit the boss to defeat him. These are classic rules. Now it can be a bit different. And I would say, to me, one of the easiest ingredients, but it still works, is the size. As soon as you have a huge creature in front of you, super tiny, yeah, you know it's going to be challenging, and you're already impressed, and you're going to be overly proud of defeating the boss because he was 10 times.
Yeah, because I always think back to like Metal Gear Solid, and you always hear about Metal Gear, but you don't see it until you get to the end of the game.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's this big tank thing. I got to take it out by myself, one little snake. But I love it. That was fun. Ingredients though, but what's needed, Rach? What's needed? Because you've defeated some of the biggest and the baddest. Yeah, what do you find with one hand? What do you think is needed, like particularly going forward in terms of like games that we'll hopefully see in the future? What would you like to see with your boss fights?
I like fantasy, but so the boss has to be like really ugly or really handsome. So nowhere in the middle, just one of the two. Sephiroth, of course,
just
being
Just a regular guy.
I guess they sort of work as checkpoints as well. We mentioned this earlier, where it needs to have something like, looking back at Zelda, or for example like Resi, so like you've just got something new, like for example a grenade launcher. The next boss probably uses the grenade launcher. So I think what makes a really good boss, especially in like Nintendo games like Zelda, is that it's almost a puzzle using something that you've just picked up. I like that.
Midas, do games need bosses?
I don't think a game necessarily needs a boss, but one thing that I find really interesting is now games have evolved. I feel like there's a big difference between a boss and an antagonist. So we have games like Far Cry Vass is like one of my favorite quote unquote bosses, because he was just stalking you the whole game, and Sephiroth is just violating Cloud the whole game. So I really enjoy that kind of manipulative, like I can't stand Mr. X, but I like that he bullied me still. I like that more than the old school Sonic the Hedgehog, where you just got Dr. Robotnik coming in and teething two animals and stuff like that. So I find like the evolution of what bosses become an antagonist and them being part of the whole journey of the game, that I find super interesting.
I'm with you there, because I'm a big fan of the Shenmue series, and you face Lan Di. You never really get to fight him properly.
Yeah, you're right. But it's there.
You're always too late, but he's always there, and he's always like hovering over the top. That's interesting. Obviously, games without bosses can be fun, but what are the examples?
Well, one of my favorite games of all time is Ori and the Blind Forest. There's not really bosses per se. There's like, I want to say it's like a gauntlet where you have to like race, and that is as difficult as a boss. But the game doesn't need bosses. They actually added bosses in the sequel, and it didn't feel as impactful in my opinion.
That's true. Yeah, the first one didn't really have.
I have in mind a game that, I don't know, they put an end boss at the end of the game, and I don't think it was really needed. It's a great game, so don't blame me for criticizing it. It's Uncharted.